Destiny, why do you hate Andrew Tate?
I wish that when we talked about delivering like purpose to young men, it wasn't wrapped up in such a materialistic package.
I agree.
It feels like that's what's led to a lot of like, so I'm a big capitalist and I'm a big liberal, but arguably one of the largest criticisms you can launch at liberalism and capitalism is this hyper-consumerist, hyper-materialist mindset.
Agree with you.
How can someone get to that place where they're influential like he is and garner that interest from an audience the way that he did without flashing all of those materialistic things?
I think you can do it, but I think a lot of people don't try. The reality is that Andrew Tate is a really funny guy. He's very charismatic, he's very charming, and he can do a lot of really funny content. I'm welcoming a little bit of a snapback on something because there are some things in this country that are insane, okay?
Everybody thinks you died for the crazy stuff.
Nobody thinks that because I...
No, casual viewer. Casual viewers.
I'm literally banned on Twitch permanently that I streamed up for 12 years.
I love it.
I love it.
Destiny, why do you hate Andrew Tate?
Why do I hate Andrew Tate? One is because I don't like the message he sells people. Two is because...
What's the message?
I wish that we could sell self-improvement without making everything so narrow in scope. Like, there are so many different paths to success. And to be fair, I've seen him give kind of contradictory messages on this. I saw him have a conversation with Sneeko, for instance, where he was very open about, like, it's not every man's life journey to become, like, the CEO of a major company. Some people need to be plumbers, whatever, which is good. But then in other videos, it always feels like the markers for success are the most materialistic, like, bankrupt, like, spiritually bankrupt things in the world.
I agree.
You know?
Right.
And that bothers me. And then two, assuming that he's not lying about everything he said online, he's undoubtedly a sex trafficker, which I think is kind of shitty, so... But there is the chance that he has lied.
Gotta back that up.
That's a...
We can talk about it all night.
Big accusation. That's a huge accusation.
Sure.
Yeah.
I mean,
you want to go into
it? He's been investigated by the authorities and they didn't find any evidence.
He's still in investigation.
Wait, to be clear, it's not true they didn't find any evidence. They found enough evidence to continue to detain him while they finished their investigation, to be clear.
Fair.
Or is that true?
Yeah,
That is true. That was going on in Romania, number one.
Yeah.
Number two, plenty of people have done crimes that get away with it and don't get convicted, which is fine. Now, ordinarily, I wouldn't
Wait,
say...
can you back up? What
Sure.
was the evidence that they found that justified continually
No, it's
detaining
not
him?
publicly stated yet.
Don't believe it's public yet because that's
it's
part of
not.
the investigative process,
Yeah.
right? So they've had to show stuff to a panel of judges and they have to make the decision. Do we think you have enough here that there's likely to be charges coming at the end of it? And so far in Romania, the court system has said, yes, we do believe that to be the case. And I think they've got 3 months left to finally press charges. And if they don't, then the charges are dropped or the case is dropped and he's free to
Don't
leave.
they only have like 1 or 2?
They might have 1 or 2 months left.
I think it was in December. Madison, do you want to?
So, no, let me ask...
Actually, Madison, just stay there.
Can I build on something
yeah.
of that with him? So what is the overarching message of Andrew Tate that
Patriarchy
you
in action.
don't support?
I wish that when we talked about delivering like purpose to young men, it wasn't wrapped up in such a materialistic package.
I agree.
It feels like that's what's led to a lot of like, so I'm a big capitalist and I'm a big liberal, but arguably one of the largest criticisms you can launch at liberalism and capitalism is this hyper-consumerist, hyper-materialist mindset.
Agree with you,
You
yes.
need to buy the next iPhone, you need to buy the next car. I really wish that like for Andrew Tate, if he wanted to sell this message of becoming like a fulfilling person, like show yourself working and doing honorable things.
Yeah.
Show yourself having a virtuous life, right? Show yourself building a real business, not doing like cam girls and getting rich that way, or not doing casinos. Show yourself having like a virtuous life, not bragging you've got 20 girlfriends. Show yourself like engaged in virtuous activities that people can embody, that can be the embodiment of what young men should pursue, rather than constantly bragging about how many cars and women and all that shit you have.
So that's a great point. I totally agree with that. And a follow-up question I have is like part of Andrew Tate's appeal is he's speaking authoritatively about all of these different things when it comes to masculinity, the way the world works, so on and so forth. And there's a lot of people that are doing that online, but Andrew Tate is constantly flashing his wealth, his cars, his houses, the girls he's with, so on and so forth. How can someone get to that place where they're influential like he is and garner that interest from an audience the way that he did without flashing all of those materialistic things?
I think you can do it, but I think a lot of people don't try. The reality is that Andrew Tate is a really funny guy. He's very charismatic. He's very charming, and he can do a lot of really funny content. He's done a lot of the video where his brother is like, "I'm gonna break the Red Bull record."
Kristen Tate broke the Red Bull drinking world record.
Why?
The Red Bull God.
Are you?
Yes. Red Bull God. Yeah.
8 cans in 3 minutes. He was the real Red Bull world.
This is the actual king. He was posted in 2013. The sport's come a long ways in. What's sport?
You can take it.
What the f their accent? What is this accent? American/British? American/Bonger? US, half US, half UK. Okay, this is a problem. These guys are probably like creepy sex traffickers, okay? They seem like they'd be a lot of fun to hang around. They really do. They really do seem like they'd be a lot of fun to hang around. I'm gonna be honest with you. When I look at like leftist people, I think about hanging out with them, or I have hung out with them. It's miserable, okay? You guys are losers. You're antisocial. You're too uptight about everything. Not cool, okay? Figure your
This is important. This is a world record attempt. This is. The world wants to know. Best in the world. Who's the best?
All right. Rules. No making me laugh. Ruin the fucking record. Cool.
Come on, you can do it.
145.
You can do it. 35 seconds left. The ninth can.
It's over after
Do it.
this.
It's done.
There's no way that last guy had the world record. I was gonna say it didn't look like much, but there's no way this guy just randomly clears a world record in 30 seconds. Or maybe it's all a game, I don't know. Is there a world record for most Red Bulls drunk in 3 minutes?
Finish it, finish it. Come on, sit. Done. He's the best.
I don't know if you guys have seen that.
The one, the one where
That
he was saying
funny.
he was going to make Meghan Markle make him some chicken.
Sure, yeah, there's like, I haven't seen that one, so I don't want to co-sign. There's that he's done that are really funny. I think he probably could have gotten relatively big doing that, but the problem is that you're making a deal with the devil when you say, I'm going to sell my soul a little bit to gain some level of popularity. Because what happens is on your journey to becoming that person that's getting popular enough to sell the message you want to sell, the message is going to get lost.
Right.
Because at the end of the day, when I look at Andrew Tate and I'm talking to a young man, well, how do you want to be successful? I want to be successful like Andrew Tate. What do you have to do? You've got to start a cam business and do gambling and sell alcohol and drugs and shit, right? Because that's essentially like what his whole business revolved around, was like casino stuff, working with mob people, and then doing like cam girl stuff. And so what kind of message are you actually selling, right? To young boys saying that's the path to success.
So in his defense, he was doing the Hustlers University, which was 18 modern wealth creation methods, which was like copywriting, drop shipping.
But that's after he made his fortune.
It was after he made his fortune. So what's the message?
So I agree, but that's like during his upwards, like, I think it was during summer of last year, during his meteoric rise, he was constantly saying like, join Hustlers University where you can find these 18 modern wealth creating methods. So I understand that you're saying like, because you have to factor in some things too. Like he was saying those things intentionally, knowing that they were inflammatory in order to go viral, which is you're streaming, this is part of the game, right?
So this is what you have to be really careful about. And it's something I think about a lot too. Like I said, you're trading parts of your soul every time you're trying to achieve a certain level of fame. And if you've traded away too many parts, there's not enough of you left to sell the message at the end. There are things that you can do to achieve a level of fame, to enact a good message. But if you've sold away too many parts of yourself to get there, you kind of lose the ability to sell the message at that point, right?
There's a Bible verse.
I agree with you on that statement too, in regards to that, but I don't necessarily think he was saying like, sure, one of the modern 18th, wealth creation methods was start a cam business, right? Manage your girls' OnlyFans. He went viral for saying,
And he had, before Hustlers University, there was the
PhD
in trafficking women, basically.
Well,
I mean, like, it kind of was, right?
I don't think.
And then when him and Tristan are openly bragging about like, oh, this is how we get these men and we make them come back every time by scamming them with
Right.
the cam girls, I'm like,
So that's also a cultural norm in Romania.
it
Like
absolutely is not.
That doesn't.
No, well, sorry, not cultural norm, but in the sense like it's commonly known as the lover boy method to like get these
And prep
girls.
women from Western Europe and to bring them over and do shit.
I wasn't talking about that, but like,
Okay.
just in general, like getting a girl to like you, and then also like fleecing pathetic men who are coming through.
Sure.
These chat groups.
What's your point?
The point I'm trying to make is that he is not necessarily saying that was the primary and only way to become this high value man, but it was one of the 18.
Yeah, but I don't think he's ever like
The point that
usually when
Destiny's making.
well, usually like if rappers get big, I think that generally they're not going to say like, I'm really glad I sold drugs to get here, right? They're not telling kids like, listen,
Fair play.
sell enough crack and one day you can be a rapper, right? Usually they're like, well, we shouldn't have been involved in that. We shouldn't have, like been doing these things as kids. Like there were other options that we just didn't explore.
Yeah, fair play.
So on this subject, I'm kind of hearing from you that it sounds like you're saying Andrew Tate was filling a niche, imperfectly so, because of all of the immoral things that he did to get there. He's filling a niche that a lot of men in the world need in terms of teaching them how to become successful, how to like climb the ladder in life, so to speak. do you see there being a void in the world in terms of like righteous masculine leadership that like more men need to step up to the plate and fill? Is that something you think is important?
I think the issue is we've spent like the past like 20 years especially, I say that probably recentism because I'm young, but like we've spent a lot of time building up women in a lot of really phenomenal ways. And women have made a ton of progress in terms of education, in terms of earning potential, in terms of like control over their lives that I think has been really phenomenal. But again, and Andrew Tate does this as well, and feminists and people on the left do this, it feels like we can never have anything without demonizing the other side. Yeah. So a lot of the gains that women made, not physically are at the expense of men, but at the very least socially they're at the expense of men. Men are men are pigs, men are dogs, blah, 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 blah. And what that's created is made this weird world where now, in some places, women are starting to dramatically outpace men. In college, it's getting insane. Yeah, I think that college education right now is like more unequal in favor of women than it was in favor of men like 50 years ago. And now we can't even have the conversation of like, what do we do about men? Because in some ways, that patriarchy thing that we mentioned earlier, there are aspects of patriarchy that still carry over. For instance, a man is expected to provide for his household. Well, what happened in the pandemic? Even more men dropped out of school to provide for their households while women continued their education. And at some point, that's going to reverse like women's earning potential. Are we ever going to be able to talk about like, hey, I think we actually do need some representation for men. It's not just enough to expect them to rise up and overcome everything on their own. And we've had a really hard time doing that. You know?
If I may, follow-up question.
Sorry, I cut you off like 3 times. I just want to finish up.
You're good, man. You're Gucci. I love you.
Follow-up question. So you're saying, in the effort to elevate women throughout society, men have been largely left behind in a lot of ways. What do you think is the message that a lot of men should be hearing in the world? What can we do to support men, Des?
Oh man, here we go. Okay.
I got my prescription whenever you're...
Yeah, that's fine. Okay. Yeah, so this is where I'll fight against a lot of like the red pill spaces, right? So I think that the number one explainer for women's success is women historically have been very feminine because they're females and biology and blah, 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 blah. One of the things that women have done over the past like few decades is they've incorporated successfully a lot of aspects of masculinity into their character that we previously thought weren't possible. We didn't think that women would excel at school. We didn't think that women could participate in certain STEM fields. We didn't think that women could start to make all the gains in a lot of these peripheral industries that they started to. And for a lot of places where they have, right? So places like being like lawyers and stuff, not necessarily in STEM, although that's starting. So as that's happened, as women have made those gains in masculinity, we're kind of like looking at men. Men have basically... they're kind of still masculine, but we haven't worked on kind of like rounding out like how men navigate the world at all, which would probably be the incorporation of some feminine features. So being emotionally intelligent, being able to communicate with people on a better level, having some level of like measured control of themselves.
Probably decrease the suicide rates among men.
Potentially, yeah. So what we've done is we've kind of like shit on men completely. So the left will say like, and figure it out. And then the red pill comes in and it's like, you need to be even more masculine. But it's like, the reality is 50, 60, 70 years ago, if you wanted a wife, all you needed was a paycheck because she's not going to school and she's not working. Now that they're going to school and working, you got to have more. What's the value proposition for a woman to get into a relationship? It can't just be that you have a job anymore.
Sorry. I just wanted to add, you're absolutely right. I do think that men are like, I don't want to say oppressed, but yeah, pretty much nowadays they are. Like you see people saying men ain't shit, men ain't that. And you wonder why the suicide rates are so high because we don't give the same amount of support to men as we do to women. There's women's support groups, there's women this, women that, but we need to focus on men as well.
That's true, but arguably one of the impediments, to bring up the patriarchy thing, one of the impediments to that I think is this idea of like, what is an ideal man or what is a man supposed to be? Because suicide rates for men have always been high, but so have things like violent crime rates, so have things like homicide rates, so have things like incarceration rates. And it's not just because the judges are unfair. In some cases they are. It's because men are the ones that are out in the streets like getting work done when shit is falling apart.
I think Andrew Tate is the response too, because like,
I agree 100%.
He's 1,000%. Like that's why like during World War II, like everybody suddenly voted someone into power, right? Because he was very extreme on the other side of things. So I think he's just representing a gigantic vacuum that's needed because I left America in 2012, right? I haven't lived here consistently since like, I lived here for like 11 months, 2016, and I saw enough writing on the wall to get the out of here. But when I come back to America, it's just like consistently this like, how can we put more accountability on men and how can we take more accountability away from women? And then like the mainstream media, the music, the video games, like you're in the gaming industry too, like everything is just like piling on to shit on men and like endlessly jerk off women. And guys kind of just like, all right, like it's kind of gotten to this point where it's ridiculous. Like, guys absolutely have issues too, but men are just not going to sit around and cry and feel sorry for themselves. But women will, 9 times out of 10, they will do that. You know what I mean?
I mean, men do that too.
They will, but I agree with you, but there's not a social stigma around men crying about the bullshit in their life.
Instead of crying, they just kill themselves. Right?
I want to
Fair play compared to women. You know what I mean? So that's why I think this Tate thing is like is a giant pendulum swing back.
It is.
The only issue.
Jonathan and Stephen, I want to get back to the original question. Asking in terms of your prescription to help support men better in our society so we can restore male greatness. I know. And I also want to hear from John on this too. We can go Stephen, John, and then John. You mentioned better emotional tools for men. You also mentioned men. It needs to be clarified what men are bringing to the table beyond just a paycheck, because now that we're past the 1950s, as you were saying, that's not enough of a value proposition. So that needs to be clarified. What else would you say needs to be added to the equation to best support?
I feel like the spaces that are designed right now for men, I'll broadly say like the manosphere, are not doing a good job. So the only space, if you are a man and you're looking for support, and then you come to these spaces, personally, I feel like they give like some of the worst advice in terms of like how to succeed, right? I'm going to be really cringe here, and I'm going to borrow from Ben Shapiro. I think he has like 3 classic points.
Not a high value man.
Yeah. I think he has 3 classic points for have at least escaping poverty. I believe 1 is don't have a kid before you're married.
Fact.
I think 2 is graduate high school. And I think 3 was get a job, wasn't it? Is that number 3? But these are like really, really
Common
basic
sense
things.
indicators,
Yeah.
sure.
And I feel like, so for instance, when I come to red pill spaces, something that's really, in my opinion, really sad is the constant shunning of like college and higher education.
Yeah.
Because that is when you look at all of the successful people, I don't know if I can say it, but like in these red pill spaces, there's a lot of like wealthy controllers of society that people are like, oh, these guys run everything, they're doing everything, blah, blah, blah. And then it's like, okay, well, fine, let's say they do that. Well, what do they do with their kids? Their kids are like a guy whose name is Goldstein. He's not training his kid to be the best drop shipper, okay? He's not training his kid to get into crypto. He's sending his kid to the best fucking universities in the world to get a high quality education, to graduate and do shit with his life. And it feels like in these spaces, you demonize the fuck out of college education.
Yeah.
Now, if you want to say that there are things like apprenticeships or going into trades, which is good, I fully agree with that 100%. But oh my God, if there's like one piece of advice I could impart that you would care that a blue-haired cuck would tell you online, if you're a man, you're trying to make it in the world, you are way better off becoming an electrician or a plumber if you don't want to go to college, because fuck school. I flunked out of school, okay? I understand, fuck school, okay? Or I quit school, right? If you want to do that, at least pick up a trade. Don't try to make it in this fucking crypto drop shipping world, because you're not going to make it.
Based recommendation of the trades. Give me some. I learned a couple years ago that like if a young guy wants to get into welding, for example, he can be making over $120,000 a year. 2 years. From the start of his education, 2 years into it, he can be making 6 figures. Yeah. And like, there's not enough of that being preached. So I completely.
And you don't see, and the problem too is that when it comes to crypto, you can see all the winners. You don't see all the losers,
which are huge, like 90% plus.
Yeah. And even a lot of the winners eventually become losers. Yeah. Did you ever see? I don't want to call anybody in particular. I'm so sorry, but like,
call them out.
Do you remember? Do you remember when Boogie 2988?
Yeah.
He made a video about how happy he was that a huge crypto investment paid off. Was it 2 months or was it a year later or whatever? He was like, guys, listen up. I'm selling the Tesla. Because my shit got fucked. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I
got rugged.
Yeah, I think it doesn't help that. Well, I love Andrew Tate.
Hold on. He's been waiting to speak.
Sorry.
I want to go to him.
So yeah, no, my thing is I run something called the Masculine Empowerment Network, right? MEN. And so I tell guys like,
it's a good name.
The general, the rule of life that a man should focus on, I call the core 4, which is make money, make muscles, learn game, and hold frame. That's my prescription. I know, like, you don't like the general red pill prescription. I'm like, the red pill has kind of like adopted me as one of their spokespeople, but I'm just my own thing. And I will say to the red pill community too, which camera is it? This one? I don't know. That one? that one right there. So I will say this in Destiny's defense, guys, for you guys that are red pill and jumping on Destiny's, back for bullshit. He's his own man. He's made his own money, and he's decided to live his own way of life. If that's not red pill, I don't know what to say it is, because he's not like a slave to the system. He has his own things, and that you guys have to learn to like be okay with encountering people in life who don't agree with the way you live. And I think it's pretty obvious, like you're clearly, if we were to categorize it like a high value man, like objectively speaking, I mean, I know. I'm not.
Good chat.
I'm talking to the chat, not you. You already know this, But like multiple women having, autonomy, having a good amount of financial income. So anyways, going back to the thing, my thing is just simply this. I tell guys, I tell them the exact same thing you say. I say make money, which is have a career or skill that will ideally lead you to six figures at some point down the road within 5 to 7 years. Make muscles, which is basically just don't be fat. I mean, everybody in America is so fucking fat. It blows my mind every time I come back here.
Don't be fat.
Don't be
lift. You're telling your men to
Bro,
lift.
can also
So-
even
Chase, can we see the
just, like,
tries?
walk 30 minutes a day. Anything to get you out of your house.
So right, but the general message is don't be fat, which is not okay because biologically speaking, that's just terrible for you, right?
Sure.
Learn game is just understanding the difference between a good woman who is like genuinely interested in you and a woman who has, other ulterior motives for you, which and now today those are very common. And then hold frame, which is basically a guy needs to understand the concept of boundaries because I think a lot of men and women don't have an idea of the concept of boundaries. I found out about the concept of boundaries when I was 35. I'm 37 now, and I wish I could understand what boundaries were, and then more importantly, the enforcement of those boundaries as well. So that's what I tell guys to focus on the core four: make money, make muscles, learn game, hold frame, money, muscles, game, frame. That's my prescription. I don't know if you disagree with it, but that's my solution that I run for this because I have a lot of guys too. I have people within the Masculine Empowerment Network that teach these guys how to code, teach these guys how to get jobs in cybersecurity, teach them about there are viable options in the trades. Like for example, power linemen. Like within 10 years, like America's going to be really shit out of luck when it comes to power linemen. Now, these jobs can get you up to $200,000 a year.
Lineman?
Power linemen. These are the guys who climb the
Power lineman.
Power lineman,
The dudes
yeah.
taking care of the power lines. Gotcha.
Exactly, and these jobs can get you to 200,000 with under 5 years. You know what I mean? Because this whole influencer bullshit, like I'm a creator, I'm a fucking crypto millionaire. No, you're not.
People will say shit like the West is falling and like every kid wants to be a YouTuber and you're like, don't be a YouTuber, be a
Yeah,
dropshipper.
exactly. So like, do you from I know it's a very TLDR prescription I give you, but that's my perspective on
Yeah,
this.
so like I would agree with the 4, but what we're probably going to fight is like what you mean by 3 and 4. Like learn game, hold frame are going to be the things that we disagree. So like for instance, when you talk about like the importance of boundaries, I would argue, and I want to go back and forth too much because I know you want to say something. I would argue that like a boundary that I would consider to be very strange is like the big push in some of these spaces for like one-sided open relationships.
Yeah.
That seems like something that is like, I don't think I would ever advocate for my audience to try to pursue
But
something
you
like
do realize there are women that are okay with that.
I mean, and there are men that are okay getting yes, but we wouldn't say that like everybody should be homosexual, right?
Well, I mean, just
Is
a
it
boundary is a
degenerate?
boundary. A boundary is a boundary. And I'm just saying that.
As on if you've had an enema.
I don't think those sort of relationships is going to be successful in most cases.
What is
so
not?
I don't think those sort of relationships is going to be successful in those.
But it's going to have a higher success relationship than being in an open relationship because open relationships, especially when the woman is out there sleeping around, have a 92% failure rate.
Yeah, but what is the failure rate for one-ended open relationships?
I don't know.
Yeah, probably really.
I don't know, but I will say men have been doing that a lot since the beginning of time.
Maybe they
Real
should
quick.
be ashamed of it at least.
What?
Wait, what
If it's
do
a
you think?
one-sided open relationship, maybe it should be like something considered shameful and not something that's promoted.
Yeah, I just my biggest issue, and this is maybe my feminist coming out, is I think a big issue today is asymmetry in relationships, pushing
Make
for
you feel
asymmetry.
trapped if you're a woman.
Yeah,
If you can't do things like let's say that you
But
say
regular-
I'm not okay with an open relationship on just your side, and I say okay, but in that case I'm gonna dump you, and she doesn't have a job, she doesn't have like any stability, and she just feels like
Hyper extreme. I don't think
I feel like this is a
people
lot
are
of
not going to
cases.
get in a relationship and then kind of disclose that later after they're married and she's fully dependent on the guy. She's quit her job.
It seems
got
like
bring
this
things.
is-
Well, also to bring things around though, that's one of the issues. Is what Tate kind of did, right? Is I love you. Come to Romania. We're going to get married. We're going to be a couple. We're going to do things. And then I know you want to comment on it, but I'm saying that was.
I'm not a big fan of telling a woman to move to another country and quit her job and be fully dependent on me in a manipulative standpoint. I don't do that.
I just wanted to say, like, I'm not trying to be a pick-me, but I'm just saying that as a woman, I do want to support a man no matter what. Like, no matter what he chooses to do, whether it be drop shipping as unsuccessful as he might be, I want to be there every step of the way. However, I do think that people should also, like women themselves, should try to get jobs to help support the family, to help support everyone else. Because you don't want to end up like you're saying, like how Tate is just bringing women in and then like he just dumps them and then they have nothing else to do.
All these men kind of want to have like a wife at home with kids that's taking care of the kids like full time.
Yeah, but at the same
there's
time,
like no space to have a job.
At the same time, taking care of the kids and taking in the man does involve trying to find financial stuff for yourself, trying to fund it, trying to like make, money, make a living.
I'm for it. I think
That's
there
a
should
part
be
of it.
like equal, like when it comes to work and stuff.
to get caught up on donations because we're really behind.
Yeah, John, what do we need to do to make men great again, bro?
Tell us how Jesus is the path to salvation.
There's a lot there. I think, we've spoken a lot this evening about this idea of progress, particularly with women. I think that the word connotes good, but I don't think it's been good. I mean, the woman, or I should say maybe the profile of the person in this country who is supposedly she who has benefited the most from all the liberation and progress that women have made would probably be like, a single working woman, middle-aged with no children. She's been liberated from, the constraints of biology, be that her bearing children. She's been liberated from the constraints of a husband having to provide for her. She's a career woman. She's working. She doesn't need all that, no need for a man or anything like that. But that also happens to be the profile of the person in this country who's the most likely to be taking SSRIs. And I think there's something to be said about that. I also think that it's easier for women to adapt to, like Stephen said, more masculine aspects of society because they're naturally, because of biology, more agreeable and more socialized. So I think it's easier to fit them into that framework. I don't think you can do the same with men. If you look at like the suicide rates with men, for example, they're at the highest they've ever been, broadly speaking, but we don't enforce those standards of masculinity like we would have in the 1950s, for example, where probably you had the strictest enforcement of those ideas of like what a man should be, how he should act, things like that. But men weren't killing themselves at the rates that they are now. So I think that, and I think the youngest guy here, I'm 23. I remember being in elementary school, they started bringing in guidance counselors. There was all this talk about boys needing to express their feelings more, boys need to do this. You see it everywhere throughout society, but for some reason that doesn't quite catch on. But when someone comes along like an Andrew Tate, who I agree with pretty much everything you said about him, or even like a Jordan Peterson, who basically took fatherly advice and delivered it through a lens of like Jungian psychology, it's like this rapid organic popularity. People literally go to like Jordan Peterson events with like tears in their eyes, thanking this guy for telling them how to basically like be a vaguely responsible man. So I don't think the answer is to take men and make them more androgynous and maybe adapt to a more androgynous frame of society. I think you need to make men be men again, and resultantly I think women need to be like women again, because I don't think women are happy, I don't think men are happy, and I don't think that they experience depression the same way. Women tend to experience depression in a much more environmental sense, meaning they are directly affected by their environment. If they're unhappy, I think that makes them depressed. Men experience depression when there's no way out of that environment. I think that we are perfectly okay with going through something, but if we don't see a way out because of all the progress that women have made, we've had to tilt the scale so you guys have a greater advantage in pretty much every aspect of life, and men just don't see that light at the end of the tunnel. And that's why we just kill ourselves. That's why, the common thing is like, well, yeah, men are more likely to kill themselves, but women are more likely to attempt it. Okay, well, why would that be? Because women are like, I'm upset, and men are just like, yeah, I'm not going to get out of this, and they like blow their head off or something. And I think that speaks to the differences in our like natural predispositions as men and as women, and I think that we need to acknowledge that for what it is and restore what would be considered a more traditional set of gender roles in society.
I think so. Real quick, the issue that I have with that, without even getting into the pros and cons of everything, is everything you've said will never come to fruition. This is my biggest issue with
ye of little faith.
The problem is that you're never getting rid of birth control, because women don't want to go back to that, and most men probably wouldn't even accept that. And you're never taking women out of the workforce and education, right? For as much as you talk about like traditional stuff has only benefited like the miserable middle-aged woman, the woman to your left that's working on Tim Pool's show has largely benefited from feminism, because women are taken seriously in terms of having political opinions, even at young ages. So I mean, like, right. I don't think we're ever going back to a world where like women don't have reproductive control and women aren't allowed to go to school and enter the workforce.
I would agree with you. I think if I shared your worldview in that you seem to have a much more positive or maybe optimistic view of like where our country is headed, where I'm sure those of us on this side of the table think like collapse is imminent. So I think that if and when that happens, which I don't think a collapse would happen in the way that people like to fantasize about, where there's like civil war and
yeah, but like who would you model ourselves after? Like who do you think's doing better than us right now?
I think that it's going to reach a point where
really come on. Sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think it'll reach a point where the cultural entropy will reach a state where people want to do away with these ideas. Like you mentioned, for example, things are going like pretty well if our biggest problem is that like men want to use the women's restroom or vice versa. I think that things get a lot worse than that, where those problems would be abandoned and we return to tradition, so to speak. But I do think it is a very real problem, because yeah, it's one thing if like a guy wants to use a girl's bathroom, but that is like one facet of the whole issue, which is like we are redefining, sex and gender. And maybe Russia is a crappy country, but their descendants are still going to be Russians and they're still going to have, access to normal children. Whereas in this country, I might not be, facing a land war, but I don't know that my children aren't going to be brainwashed by the popular culture to mutilating their genitalia. I certainly don't have my heritage anymore. I certainly am not able to be proud of my history. So if I don't even have my future, it's like, is this really a great country because I have reasonable access to like food, sex, entertainment? Like, no. I mean, these countries I think are better in a more...
I think this country produces awesome things, like even today. I think things like this podcast are evidence of it. Russia's like heritage is like circle jerking themselves over World War II. where they were the defenders against Nazism. So they weren't even aggressors against it, right? America is the country that ended, and the West is largely who won against World War II against Hitler. The only reason the Soviets killed so many people is because the Nazis tried to invade their homeland. When you look at in Russia, no offense to Russia, economically that country is not doing too well. Socially that country has a ton of problems
because the empire collapsed. I mean,
well, yeah, sure, the empire collapsed, and even internally, there are a ton of issues that Russia doing. But Putin can come out and give what are really even right-wing American talking points of the gays in the West are destroying everything, and the jokes in the beginning of the Ukrainian war were literally are your trans soldiers going to be defeating our proud Russian ethnic persons? And now you've got Russian dudes who are committing in ditches because now these trans Russian soldiers are flying drones and dropping grenades on them, right? And I mean, you've got the archetypical trans Ukrainian dropping grenades on 2 Russians giving each other head in a bunker somewhere, and it's what's actually happening here? I don't disagree that there are problems, and listen, okay, I'll say it here, I'm welcoming a little bit of a snapback on some shit because there are some things in this country that are insane, okay?
Yeah.
A lot of the transitions
Talk
got
about
really
that,
crazy,
everybody
right?
thinks you died for the crazy stuff.
Nobody thinks that because I...
Casual viewers. Casual viewers.
I'm literally banned on Twitch permanently that I streamed up for 12
I love
years.
it. I love it.
Because I was against some of the trans athlete stuff, right? And I got involved. But I'm just saying that so I'm not saying that a snapback is necessarily wrong, but it's still moving in a certain direction. Women are never, ever going to give up everything they've got. Nobody wants to give up that much autonomy and freedom.
Well, you are presupposing that we would ask them permission before we would simply.
Oh, okay. So maybe it's something.
Women would literally it would be if you want civil war.
We took away your right to an abortion, and you cried about it outside of buildings when the police blocked you off, and then you basically went back to your life.
Of legislation and women getting politically active because of that.
It's politicized nagging. It's this is not threatening.
If there were a civil war between men and women,
I don't absolutely.
Women would win.
Women would absolutely win because there would be men that would side with them. In a civil war between men and women, you think men are going to kill all the women? And be we won. We did it.
You'd have all
those men would be Sims.
Women's suffrage and everything. Women's suffrage only happened because there were men that also wanted it, right? The majority class, men in general. There's a huge talent pool. There's a really interesting. I get a lot of emails about this. Sorry, I don't want to drone us too much. When it comes to crazy, weird, trans people and autistic people, blah, 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 there's a lot of talent there that has migrated to places like San Francisco. We make fun of it for being the LGBT capital of the world. There's a lot of programmers and a lot of talent in that pool, though, because demographically they're drawn to those types of jobs. Because a lot of times, if you can code, you can code. They don't give a fuck if you have a dick or a vagina or if you use Z's or pronouns or whatever. If you can do the work, you can do the work. So the thing that I like about our Western society, to bring it back, is that we have problems with how much diversity we push. I agree, but holy shit, we've been able to siphon so much talent out of a lot of that diversity. Even Andrew Tate himself is to some extent a product of a really globalized world that is connected to so many different ethnic and religious and cultural markets.
Yeah, John, I definitely want to hear more from you, but I do need to just keep things moving along here. So okay, we have Mike Davis. Destiny
is the type to pull his pants all the way down at the urinal. Brian, you should be ashamed to give this beta cuck a platform. Instead of hopping podcast to podcast, have him hop in the ring with me. I kick his ass so bad his quote-unquote girl will have to identify him.
By the way, this is Mike Davis. That's literally
real? Is this a real thing?
He looked like the kind of guy that wouldn't be interested in Melina because she's about 14 years too old for him.
What the
Hey, shots fired.
Also, Stephen, you already say you can't be reading those comments because these guys are jerking off at the same time.
I like it. I like getting
because they sort of humiliation.
They're edging themselves, waiting for the watch screen, but that's all good.
Destiny, is this one for you? Or who should read this?
Brian, I might have to come down and show you how a real alpha deals with an unruly woman. Never allow a nobody goof to dilute the quality of the show. Plus, Destiny's lucky to have a woman as much as she is by his side, where he'd be seen as more eccentric than he already is. He seems like the kind of guy that would call himself an alpha for beating women, too. So. Good one.
Some A1 firing back right there.
$300 into this evening.
300 Burger King?
He actually...
Yeah, by the way, still waiting for my crown, please. I'm going to be going on a flight soon.
He owns 300... Wait, did he slide in your DMs, Mike Davis?
No, I just need the Burger King crown.
Destiny, you want to read this one?
Hi, Destiny. If Tate is bad for presenting masculinity as owning camgirl sites, is it bad for women to present femininity as doing OnlyFans and camgirl content?
What do you think?
I think the issue is, I could be wrong, but I don't know of OnlyFans girls saying that OnlyFans is destroying the world. But the Tates seem to believe that OnlyFans is destroying the world, that men simping for women are. So when you engage in that industry, it seems a little hypocritical. I'm not saying that running a cam business is wrong, except when you do it by sex trafficking. What I'm saying is that it's probably wrong to do that and then to come out later and be like, these are the worst things happening to society when you've been one of the biggest players contributing to it.
Yeah, it's hypocritical. Destiny and Chase, question. You both give great advice. Thank you. Destiny, I enjoy being my good, kind-hearted self. During my degenerate life, I got many women, but now I'm better-ish and they ignore. Chase, I'm tempted to go back to church. How do you control sexual temptation? Do you want to address his comment first?
Don't control it. I think that sex is like alcohol, video games, whatever hobby you partake in. There are healthy ways to indulge in certain hobbies, and there are unhealthy ways to indulge, right? If talking to people, hooking up is something that you enjoy, just make sure you're safe. Make sure you're not like throwing away your life to do it. Make sure that you're, keeping the rest of your life in order while you're pursuing those things. Same thing I would say with drinking or gambling or anything else.
Says you.
It's not religious, so.
He was also asking me, here's what I'll tell you, brother. The reason why I started being abstinent back in 2020, I saw the way that the world was going. It's my opinion that biblical prophecies are shaping up to be fulfilled right now. And I made the decision to be abstinent, to stop having sex with my girlfriend at the time, because I knew it was a sin against my own body, against her body, and against the Lord. And I also knew that I wanted to secure God's favor over my life. I wanted to honor God with my life, and I wanted God to reward me in turn for that. And quite honestly, he has, man, in spades. So I would just encourage you, seek to honor the Lord with your life. Pray to him for where it is that you want to go in life, what it is that you want. Jesus promised us in John chapter 15, if we pray for something in his name and it's to the Father's glory, he will give it to us. And you see throughout the Bible, there's a precedent. When people seek to honor the Lord with their lives, God is much more likely to answer their prayers. So that's what I would tell you.
Big W for God.
Can I add?
Yes.
Hold on. Let's keep it moving. Mike Davis is a little blank on FNF talking trash, and when they talk back, he threatens them and exposing, but never does. That's some whack-ish Mike. Do better.
Damn.
He's probably not in the chat anymore.
Mike Davis,
I'll fight you in place of destiny. I will fight you in place of destiny.
Mike Davis, you got to fire back at Que Onda Ese.
What did you want to add?
Oh, I just wanted to say, as someone who does practice abstinence as a virgin, I do agree, because it's helped me weed a lot of bad people out. Because,
yes,
a lot of people have the wrong intentions when you first meet them, and they immediately want sex out of you. And when you do that, when you hook up with them, the first few times you get with them, it's like they already see that you're...
I mean, there's pros and cons to everything, though, right? Because I would argue, I'll probably have huge disagreements here, but I would argue that men that are hunting virgins, sometimes they're looking for people that they can exploit as well, right?
Yes, certainly.
Yeah, I do think it is good, and I would argue... To some men's chagrin, I think that if you're a woman and you're looking for a serious relationship, how you treat sex has to be done in a very careful way. Yeah. Because if you're a guy on the first date, it's really hard to figure out who's serious and who's just trying to play or whatever, right? I'll hear some guys say oh, this chick didn't want to the fifth or sixth date, I'm out of there. And it's okay, well, you were never in her dating pool anyway, because that's not what she's looking for. So I think that having some reasonable access to sex is okay if you're looking for something more serious, for sure.
You should probably build on that too, on how guys looking for conservative, decent women, these women are not going to give it up on the first, second, or third date.
Yeah, but I don't think guys here are ever looking for conservative women. They're looking for hoes with low body counts.
So I agree with you
in the red pill manosphere space. You are not. Here's the thing I'll give you, and I've come from religious communities, and this is true. And I don't know who will disagree with me here. There are some people that are on massive cope from the Tate industry that disagree with this. If you're a guy and you've ran through 20, 30, 40 women, the types of conservative women that you talk about are never going to want to be with you. And I know that we have some disagreements on do women care about body count, blah blah blah. If you're looking for a conservative woman, she's not going to be with a guy that wanted to be a boy throughout all of his 20s. It's not going to happen.
But I think it would be so. I'll push back slightly on that and saying that I think it would be a larger disqualifier for a man looking at a woman who has a large body count than a woman looking at a man who has a large body count.
Certainly.
I don't know. I think it really.
One thing, Destiny, we have your girlfriend in the chat.
Thank you.
All right, we have Ryan, the eating warrior. Thank you, man.
Feminism, kryptonite, accountability.
Spelled kryptonite.
How does that even make sense? I feel like women have some of the most harshest forms of accountability in society.
With being able to get out of pregnancies with abortion?
Being forced to care for a kid for 18 years after you've had the child on the deck and just leave.
I mean, dude, nobody's forcing them. They chose to have a kid.
Yeah, and so did the guy that left.
I know.
Who's got more accountability.
She chose that man as her
That's why child support exists.
The guy has the ability to
Would you blame the woman
That's why
for
child
him
support
leaving?
exists.
The average
Bad
payment
choice in
child
partner.
support is $288 a month.
I mean, look, I don't think dudes should be able to just leave women.
Sure, I know, but I'm just saying, that's an example. That's a really big accountability factor that has a lot of influence over your life, and that's something where women are held ultimately accountable.
Maybe the lesson here is that women should be more selective with
that can be fine, and that can be the lesson. However,
Why
you
can't
say
we
that
just
women
tell
should
men to be better?
Sure, you say that women should be held
Well,
accountable there.
that's what we've been doing. I've been asking the whole podcast, how can we make men great again?
Sure, you say that's how women should be accountable there. I'm just saying that's an example of if a mistake is made with a child, more often than not, the woman is going to be held ultimately accountable for it.
It's a fair point.
And it's a very harsh form.
It's a fair point.
All right,
I brought it up.
El Emirati with the is that British pounds?
Feminism is white supremacy for women. They don't stand up for women of color. First wave feminism is intrinsically linked to racism because they did not want black men or women to get the vote when they got it. The feminist is just a stupid AF girl pretending to be smart. You fire back at
Seneca Falls Convention.
I'm sorry they feel that way. I don't know what else to say. I'm not a person who like tries to dunk on people. I just want to have like actual conversation.
Fair
Like,
enough.